The ambulance arrived late. Too late. The elderly woman was already gone. The paramedics didn't seem surprised. They made a phone call. Within minutes, a hearse pulled up. The funeral director was ready with contracts. The family was in shock. How did they know so fast? How did they get here before the body was even cold? The answer would horrify an entire nation. The paramedics had been paid, not to save lives, but to end them. Welcome to Łódź, Poland, where between 1990 and 2002, ambulance workers murdered hundreds of patients for profit. They called their victims skins, and business was booming. Łódź is Poland's third largest city. In the 1990s, it was struggling. The fall of communism brought economic chaos. Factories closed. Jobs disappeared. People were desperate for money. Even doctors and paramedics. Their salaries were around $250 per month, barely enough to survive. So some of them found another source of income, the funeral business, and it was more lucrative than you'd think. Here's how it worked. Funeral homes and Łódź were in fierce competition. Whoever got to the family first usually got the business. The funerals could cost thousands. Elaborate caskets, embalming services, burial plots, big money. But you had to move fast before the other funeral homes found out. So the funeral directors made a deal with the people who knew about deaths first. The ambulance crews, the emergency room staff, the dispatchers. They paid them for information. A simple phone call. A patient just died. Here's the address. Go talk to the family. The going rate was about 800 zloty, around $200. Not much, but for someone making $250 a month, it added up. At first, it was just information. Wait for natural deaths. Make the call. Collect the payment. But then the funeral directors got greedy. Natural deaths weren't coming fast enough. They needed more bodies, more funerals, more profit. So they made a new offer to the ambulance crews. Don't just report the deaths. Create them. Kill the patients. We'll pay more. Much more. And some of the paramedics said yes. The main killer was a paramedic named Andrzej Nowosian. He was in his 30s. He'd been working in emergency medicine for years. By all accounts, he seemed normal, quiet, professional. But according to later confessions, he killed over 50 people, maybe more. His partner was another paramedic, Karol Banis. He was younger, more hesitant, but he participated. Together, they turned their ambulance into a mobile execution chamber. Their weapon of choice was Pavulon, the brand name for pancuronium bromide. It's a muscle relaxant used in surgery to paralyze patients temporarily, to keep them still during operations. But in the wrong hands, it's a murder weapon, and it's nearly perfect for that purpose. Here's why. Pavulon paralyzes every muscle in your body, including your lungs. You stop breathing, but you're still conscious. You're aware of everything. You can't move, can't speak, can't call for help. You just suffocate, slowly, over several minutes. And the worst part? It leaves almost no trace. It breaks down quickly in the body. Hard to detect in autopsy. Perfect for murder. Nowosian and Banis would respond to emergency calls. Usually elderly patients. Heart attacks, strokes, breathing problems. People who are already sick, already dying. The perfect targets. The paramedics would arrive, load the patient into the ambulance, then inject them with Pavulon. The patient would seize up, stop breathing, die within minutes. The paramedics would claim they did everything they could. The patient was just too far gone. Natural causes. The family believed them. Why wouldn't they? These were medical professionals, trusted members of the community, heroes who tried to save lives. Then came the phone call to the funeral home. We have a fresh one. Elderly woman. Died in the ambulance. Here's the address. Go now. The funeral director would race to the scene, arrive before other competitors, offer condolences to the grieving family, present the contract. The family, in shock and vulnerable, would sign. The funeral home made thousands. The paramedics got their cut, usually between 12,000 and 70,000 zloty, depending on how profitable the funeral was. They split the money. Everyone got paid, except the victim, who got murdered. But Nowosian didn't always use Pavulon. Sometimes he didn't need to. Sometimes he just drove slowly, took the long route, delayed treatment, let the patient die naturally. Other times, he He would park the ambulance. Just sit there, wait for the patient to deteriorate, to slip away, then declare them dead. Radio it in, make the call. Another skin for the funeral home. Another payday. The scale of the operation was staggering. It wasn't just Nowotion and Banis. Almost 40 other members of the casualty department were under investigation. Doctors, nurses, dispatchers, ambulance drivers. Some actively killed patients. Others just looked the other way. Some sold information. Others provided alibis. It was a conspiracy that infected the entire emergency medical system in Łódź. And it went on for over a decade. In Łódź, over 200 ampoules of Pavulon were used by emergency units in 1 year. In Warsaw, which has about twice the population, only 90 ampoules were used over the same period. The numbers didn't make sense, unless the paramedics were using it for something other than legitimate medical purposes, which of course they were. They were using it to murder people. One of the confirmed victims was a woman named Ludmila. She was elderly. She had health problems. She called for an ambulance. Banis responded. He was later convicted for her particularly cruel murder. The details of what happened in that ambulance were never fully revealed, but prosecutors described it as one of the most horrific cases. A helpless woman, paralyzed by Pavulon, suffocating slowly, while the paramedic watched, waited, then made his phone call. Business as usual. The conspiracy remained hidden for years. The victims were mostly elderly, already sick. Their deaths seemed natural, expected even. Nobody questioned it. Nobody suspected murder. The families grieved. The funeral homes profited. The paramedics collected their payments. And the killing continued. The scandal was first brought to public attention on January 23, 2002, in an article in the Polish newspaper Gazeta Wyborcza. The journalists were Tomasz Patora, Marcin Stelmaziak, and Przemysław Witkowski. They had been investigating for months, following tips, interviewing sources, connecting the dots. What they uncovered was beyond anything they imagined. A systematic murder operation, run by the people sworn to save lives. They described how hospital workers would call funeral homes regarding patient deaths to receive bribes, and sometimes even killed patients. The dead patients were called skins, hence the article title, Skin Hunters. The article exploded across Poland. The nation was horrified. People couldn't believe it. Paramedics murdering patients? For money? It seemed impossible, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutors launched a massive investigation. They examined hundreds of suspicious deaths. They interviewed witnesses. They analyzed drug records. The Pavulon usage in Łódź was off the charts, far higher than any comparable city. Some people hurled stones at passing ambulances. Others refused emergency treatment. The trust in the medical system collapsed overnight. If you couldn't trust paramedics, who could you trust? Calls from relatives suspecting foul play in the deaths of loved ones flooded police phone lines across the country. Everyone started questioning, did my mother really die of natural causes? Or was she murdered for profit? The arrest began. 7 suspects initially. 2 Łódź doctors and 2 funeral parlor owners were among those charged with bribery. But the real monsters were Nowotion and Banis. The prosecutors charged them with multiple counts of murder. The evidence was damning. Drug records, phone logs, witness testimony, financial transactions, and eventually a confession. Nowotion confessed to his cellmate. He admitted to more than 50 murders. 50 people, maybe more. He killed them all. For money, for funeral home kickbacks, for payments that averaged $50 to $100 per victim. He destroyed families, ended lives, created a nightmare that would haunt Poland for decades. And he did it without hesitation, without remorse. The trial began in 2006. It lasted over a year. The testimony was heartbreaking. Families describing their loved ones' final moments. How the ambulance came late. How the paramedics seemed indifferent. How the funeral home arrived suspiciously fast. The pieces finally made sense. But the truth was more horrifying than anyone imagined. On January 20th, 2007, 4 employees from a hospital casualty department in Łódź were sentenced. Paramedic Andrei Nowoshin was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of 4 patients and for helping Carol Banas in a further murder. Only 4 murders were proven beyond reasonable doubt, but everyone knew there were many more. Paramedic Carol Banas was sentenced to 25 years imprisonment. Dr. Janusz Kalinsky was sentenced to 6 years and banned from practicing medicine for 10 years for willfully endangering 10 patients. Another doctor received 5 years. The sentences sparked controversy. Life in prison for only 4 murders? He confessed to over 50. The problem was evidence. Most of the victims had been buried years ago. The Pavulon had degraded. The bodies had decomposed. The statute of limitations had expired on older cases. Prosecutors could only prove the recent cases, the ones where evidence still existed. But investigators believe the true number of victims is in the hundreds, maybe even 1,000. We'll never know for sure. The funeral home added the cost of the bribes it paid to the killers to the bills that the families of the deceased paid for their funerals. Think about that. The families paid for their own loved ones' murders. The funeral homes charged extra to cover the cost of the kickbacks. The money used to kill Grandma was included in Grandma's funeral bill. The cruelty is almost incomprehensible. The scandal led to immediate reforms. State authorities banned the use of Pavulon by emergency medical crews. They implemented stricter oversight of funeral homes. They increased paramedic salaries. They created new protocols for ambulance services. Poland's entire emergency medical system was overhauled. But the damage was done. The trust was broken, and it took years to rebuild. The psychological impact on the families is immeasurable. Imagine discovering your mother was murdered. Not by a stranger, not by a random killer, but by the paramedic who came to save her. The person she trusted, the person you trusted, and it was all for money, for a few $100s. Your loved one's life was worth less than a month's rent to their killer. Some families had their loved ones exhumed, to test for Pavulon, to know for sure. Some found evidence, others didn't. The drug had degraded too much. The uncertainty is torture. Did they die naturally? Or were they murdered? You'll never know, and that not knowing haunts you forever. Nowoshin showed no remorse during the trial. He sat quietly, answered questions calmly, acted like he was discussing the weather, not the systematic murder of dozens of people. Psychologists who evaluated him found no conscience, no empathy, no guilt. He was a predator who found the perfect hunting ground, an ambulance, where victims came to him, where he had total control, where nobody suspected a thing. Banas was different. He cried during sentencing. He apologized to the families. He claimed he was pressured, coerced. He said he was afraid to refuse. The funeral directors were connected to organized crime. Refusal could mean violence, death threats, but the court didn't buy it. He had a choice. He chose murder. He chose profit over human life, and he would pay the price. The case raises disturbing questions about healthcare systems, about what happens when economic desperation meets access to vulnerable patients, about how profit motives can corrupt even the most sacred professions. The Hippocratic Oath says, first, do no harm. But in Łódź, the oath meant nothing. Harm was profitable. Death was a business opportunity, and patients were just commodities, just skins. The funeral home owners received relatively light sentences, bribery charges, a few years in prison. Some claimed they didn't know patients were being murdered. They just paid for information. But investigators found evidence of direct collaboration. Undertakers allegedly pressured paramedics to expedite deaths through methods such as withholding treatment, delaying transport, or administering paralytic agents like Pavulon. They weren't passive recipients of information. They were active participants in murder. In 2024, HBO Max released a documentary series called Skin Hunters. It brought the case back into public consciousness. New interviews, new evidence, new testimony. The documentary revealed just how widespread the conspiracy was. How many people knew? How many participated? How many looked the other way? It wasn't a few bad actors. It was a system, a culture, an industry built on death. Poland has tried to move on, to forget. But you can't forget something like this, especially if your family was affected. especially if you'll never know if your loved one was murdered. The skin hunter's case is a permanent scar on Polish society, a reminder of what can happen when ethics collapse, when money matters more than lives, when the people sworn to protect you become your predators. Andrzej Nowosian is still in prison. He's eligible for parole in 2032. He'll be in his 60s. Some fear he'll be released. Others hope he dies behind bars. But no amount of prison time can undo what he did, can bring back the victims, can heal the families. The damage is permanent. The trauma is forever. The Pavulon murders were not crimes of passion, not crimes of mental illness. They were crimes of greed. Cold, calculated, systematic. Paramedics became predators. Ambulances became hearses. And the people who called for help received death instead. This is the story of the skin hunters, the most disturbing healthcare scandal in modern history, and a warning about what happens when we commodify human life, when we reduce people to profit margins, when we turn the vulnerable into victims, and when we trust the wrong people with the power over life and death.